Welcome, everybody. My name is Maxwell Okello. I'm the Chief Executive of the American Chamber of Commerce. I will be moderating this morning's session. And thank you so much for joining this call, joining this webinar. Thank you for your interest, continued interest in our webinars. It's great to see, again, such a huge turnout from the membership and beyond. Before we begin, just a few pointers. The session, as per our norm, will be an hour long. Your audio and video will be muted or off during this session. We will have a panel discussion for the first segment of this webinar, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So please, as we proceed, do post your questions in the Q&A chat bot. I may, at some point, call on some of you to actually address your questions directly to the panelists. And so this is the first of a new series on digital transformation that will explore how businesses and indeed our own realities are being shaped and accelerated against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, but more importantly, the metamorphosis that the world has seen that has been brought on by this pandemic. The virus definitely has forever changed the world of work. Not only is who is working changed, but also what they do and how they do it. A 2020 talent trends study by Mercer shows that only 34% of business leaders are investing in workforce learning and reskilling as part of their strategy to prepare for the future of work. Please note that only 34% are actually actively not only thinking about this, but investing on the right skills for the future of work. Indeed, a lot of trends that were already out there just sped up or are being accelerated significantly due to this situation we find ourselves in. Worldwide, there are studies that are saying that 40% of the world's workforce are contingent workers, that is, workers who are outsourced or not permanent in employment. And this number is rising. In the Fortune 100 companies, contingent workers make up 30% of the workforce, but predictions are that this will soon rise to at least 50%. Now, these numbers are telling. They show a window into that future. And indeed, some of us are asking ourselves whether that future is already here. So these changes to the workplace and workforce, previously thought to be light years away, are indeed our reality right now. And so the big question is this: has this COVID-19 pandemic just leapfrogged us into the future of work and therefore presented an opportunity and a challenge at the same time for businesses to rise to? And so this morning, to address this critical question and to give us perspective on this interesting topic, we are joined by two great panelists, Suzanne Maherali from Uber and Alex Gakuru, Executive Director at Code IP Trust. Now, I don't think that I'll do them justice if I was to introduce them and read their bios. I think I'd let them introduce themselves and do it in the way that would be appropriate. And so I want to just quickly turn this over to Suzanne. Please give your introduction and opening remarks, and then Alex will take on it from there. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Maxwell, so much for having me here on the panel today. It's very exciting to be able to talk about this topic. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for also joining us today. My name is Suzanne Maherali, as Maxwell has said. I lead public policy for Uber for East and Southern Africa. I've been with Uber now for about 4 years, so I joined when we were literally just starting in Kenya. And it's been quite the journey, joining from when we were a small office with a few drivers. We had maybe 10 people. Now, we've got 2 floors and we've got over 10,000 drivers. So it's just it's just been really fascinating to see how the business has grown, how it's evolved, and just what the impact of digital and digitization has been on our economy, especially over the last 5 years. So people often ask me, they said public policy, like what is that? And the easiest way that I describe my role is I try and make sure that we're legal everywhere that we operate. And over and above that, it's really my job to make sure that we are working in line with government objectives. And so we do a lot of things around smart mobility, around safety, and future of work is also a very important topic to us. In fact, we don't think about future of work as the future, we think about it as the present. Globally, we have over 5 million drivers. And so when you're dealing with just the enormity of that many people using your platform to make a living, work in its present form is such an important thing. We tend to look at it around 4 pillars, which I'll go through very quickly before handing back to Maxwell. Work is really for us around, the platform providing access, ensuring that people have the ability to earn money from whatever kind of skill set they have. Flexibility is the second one. It's very important. More and more people are opting for being their own boss, for having flexible work, for being able to work when they want so that it matches their schedule. Next, we look at protection. This is something that's very important as well, looking at social protections and really making sure that every worker has the same access to basic rights, whether you are employed or self-employed. And finally, growth, which is about lifelong learning and making sure that we instill that and give access to that to everyone who uses our platform. So thank you very much. And I'll hand back to Maxwell.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that very comprehensive introduction. And indeed, I think we echo the fact that we are actually living in this future of work. And so I want to very quickly turn over to Alex. Alex, please give us your introductory remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maxwell, and Suzanne, my fellow panelists, and all the people participating. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity before I even introduce myself, because I think what the chamber has done is to awaken all of us into this new reality, to know that life goes on, business goes on, organizations have to have continuity, and we do need this so that we cease staying in what is otherwise described as paralysis analysis, just looking at data of the cases, the deaths, and the recoveries. We are getting tired of that on TV. Yeah, now, I am Alex Gakuru, and I was once told, some people are asked to introduce themselves and they say what they do. So I'll try to deviate from that and say who I am. 3 words describe what it is that I stand for. I'm a technology rights defender. In that context, in all the things that I'll say here, in whatever I do at Code IP, what I have done in my past, all revolve around that aspect. And so what does it mean to be a technology rights defender? Is to look at technology because we love it, this wonderful world of technology, and expose its ugly underbelly, and at the same time make the best use of it. And so this environment of technology is what we deal with in Code IP Trust. We have been around for the last 10 years. It started in 2010 as a fully Kenyan nonprofit. We look at matters of intellectual property, catalyzing local content development, and its intellectual property protection. This we achieve through our interventions on policy, law, and regulation. And we have a very good interest, or a deep interest, in technology and society. We do this with collaboration with institutions around the world. We deal with other civil society, non-profit organizations. We engage with private sector. We deal with policymakers, and indeed members of the public. So we do have that holistic approach in the matters that we are looking at. In this regard, and to the theme of today, I particularly like it because it's something I have lived at a personal self. Because as I'll show a saying somewhere that if you can find your perfect job, create it. And you'll find with the layoffs that have been going on in the many years leading to this, whether in private sector, public sector, with many graduates leaving universities, the problem of jobs has been increasing, opportunities have been lessening. So I'm also looking at this as an opportunity, as a window, giving us alternative ways of addressing the issue of work. And therefore, everybody, including the job seekers or the people who are looking for work, and also employers and the entire ecosystem of society progresses, notwithstanding COVID. I do know that the challenges have come because we have been catapulted into this situation. We would have liked, because we have been looking at this since 2013, to go progressively. But this has come and we have to deal with it. And so, yes, I'm happy and I will give my best to this discussion and welcome all the questions. Thank you, Maxwell, and everybody for having me.
All right, thank you very much, Alex. I think that was great, and I like the fact that you're talking about technology and the nexus with society, and that I think is a good place to start off for kick off our discussion. This massive digital acceleration that we've seen is happening anywhere you turn, everywhere you turn. I mean, the very fact that we are hosting this on online, this webinar, which is a complete break from tradition, from a chamber perspective. Our forums are usually, in-person forums. And those are great because, there's interaction between people. I can really get to feel the chemistry in the room, the energy in the room. That's a little difficult with this sort of platforms. Yet, they've actually made it easier for us to be able to interact, to be able to do things that previously took quite a bit of effort to get going. Indeed, we are joined in this call by people from various parts of the globe. And I think that is positive. And so the question is, as business leaders or businesses broadly, how do we prepare ourselves to really take advantage of this future that is actually now? Or for those of us who've not even woken up to that reality, how do we make sure that we are pressing the right buttons for our organizations and for our people? So we can start. Any one of you can take that. Maybe start off with Suzanne, and then Alex can also comment as well.
Thanks, Maxwell. So it's clear that some companies are more prepared than others as far as digital is concerned. I think for me personally, I've been lucky in that Uber, being a tech company, we're always at the forefront of everything digital, from the latest apps to being on top of the trends. So the movement to working from home and working with my colleagues across the globe remotely was just second nature. And I think that what companies need to really do is make sure that they are also on top of these digital trends. I think for a lot of sectors that we have here in Kenya, particularly around like banking, insurance, there's a lot of like analog way of working that's still like very much rampant throughout. And really that push and that acceleration into those online platforms in a big way is really, really important to breed that within the people that work there. I think the other thing that I've witnessed just on the Uber side is that we have been very adaptable, and the process from decision making to implementation happens very quickly. Over the last few weeks, I've witnessed the ability of the company to re-strategize very quickly, from seeing the rides business really be affected because people are not moving around as much, to delivery taking off, and just pivoting very quickly to see how we can enhance on the delivery space and run a business in the crisis, and at the same time to see what we could do for the community at large. How can we help to our frontline workers? How can we get meals to those who need it, and so on. And finally, I think that problem-solving skills are also very vital. I think a lot of employees can be used to just being spoon-fed what they're supposed to do, but really breeding that independent thinking and planting those survival skills is what, at the end of the day, I feel makes you more adaptable and more agile to changing times.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So adaptability, the ability to quickly pivot, based on the scenarios of the situation that you find yourself, being able to quickly implement any solutions that you've come up with, and a challenge right there for employees to really sharpen their problem-solving skills and help the organizations then be able to adapt to the situation. Those are great insights, Suzanne. Thank you. Alex, how about you?
Thank you. I want to start off by saying that from 10th of March, 3 days before government encouraged us, all of us, to work from home, I had closed my organization and told people to work from home. And to date, I've only been there, I think, twice to pick things and go. So I've never worked from there, I've been working from home. And indeed, in the past, I have been employing this model of remote working. I'm also happy to share that from 2012 to 2016, I did work for an international organization called Creative Commons, where I worked in Kenya, but we were headquarters in Mountain View, California. But it turned out that even the organization closed its headquarters, and everybody today are all wireless. They all work from wherever they are and submit how they work. Now, this model is something so new if you think we started engaging in it in 2012, and today is when we are talking of some of the companies here trying to find out what this is and how it works. So we have actually been living this future of work in the sense of how we work. Now, I would also be dishonest to say that the fact that that is a background and I have all that history, that I've not been affected, or my organization has not been affected by this pandemic. Why? Because I do deal with large volumes of people, especially the youth, when I'm training them on online safety. I've had to cancel events where I was meant to train 400 teachers in the same month, just prior to when we closed, out of the concerns of this. I also have a target of training over 700,000 children on online safety, as encouraged by the patron of Scouts, the President Uhuru Kenyatta last year in November. So how do I do it? So I have to keep looking for new ways of delivering on that. So we are in this together. I'm also affected. The fact that I've got this at a personal and institutional level, I interface with humans on face-to-face, so I'm also equally affected. Now, what I would want to say to companies that maybe this is the first time then they're engaging on this platform is the best thing is to start looking at models that have worked elsewhere. They have to start dealing with, look, what are the companies that have done this? There are quite a number of them. Start studying their model. Now start doing a lot of evaluation of what can work for you, what can't work. It's not a one size fits all. You have to be cognizant of the local culture. Every place has a culture, just like even online is an online culture, or even different platforms have their online cultures. The same culture you engage with on Facebook is not the same culture of Twitter, neither is it of WhatsApp or Telegram, whichever platform. So culture is really not the traditions sense, it's the way people interact in a certain environment. So we see culture in that regard and figure out, based on your institutional history and what you deal with, what is going to work for you and what is not going to do. We cannot embrace what happens or has been tried out there, and we feel like it's a global best practice because it might not work. Part of the problems of M-Pesa not working in other countries is because they don't understand that, to me, a large part of M-Pesa success in Kenya is a culture of communal trust. You know, I've been to America where people are asking, how does a corner shop, which is uninsured, store so much money in cash? You know, that's risky and all that. They just can't understand how it is really a translation of our societal values and our approach that has a role to play with the business model as implemented. So a one size fits all is not what will work. I would also want to ask the companies that have not done this before to explore technologies that they have not used before, not to be afraid. They say you cannot climb the ladder of success with cold feet. So if it's a new environment, you must be ready willing to try new ideas, new technologies, new platforms, and see how those can fit into your work. And finally, I would also want to encourage that we do not fall into a situation where we blame policy, absent policy, law, and regulation, that's why we can't move. After all, business always ahead, society is always ahead, then the policy and government, they follow to correct mischief. So in my view is that you must be able, just like the chamber has pioneered in exploring this new model, every business must engage its own creativity in exploring what will work based on the niche area. Let me pause there for now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Alex. You know, we're talking about a debate based on your insight, Alex, that has been ongoing since 2012, maybe even earlier, and has been largely viewed from a technology lens. Yeah. However, I think that human beings have been thrust at the core of this debate. We're talking about remote working. We're talking about just the impact on how we relate as human beings, given some of the protocols that the world has had to effect to sort of manage the spread of this virus. So when you talk about social distancing, the fact that you can't even gather in large groups, and so on and so forth, the remote working, all these things are bringing in a very interesting dynamic in the way that this debate around the future of work is panning out. Again, just to you and Suzanne, what excites you or frightens you the most about this future of work that we're talking about? Alex, you want to go first?
Absolutely. Let me share one slide to just give you my take on that. Let's look at that. Let me share this. Just a second. Share the desktop, and then this is it. I hope you can see that. Are you all able to see that?
Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead.
Excellent. Now, I summarize these few points to try and capture essentially what I feel are some of the exciting things for me when it comes to this. Number one, let's start looking at decongestion, because we probably are seeing the negative side that we have to keep social distance. But then what about what is going to happen to our cities? For those of us that go to town, you have to wake up maybe at around 4:30 to beat the traffic jam, and also the human in the streets bumping into each other. And this has cost. Fuel companies have been now crying there's nobody. Fuel has gone to negative price simply because fuel is not needed for all these movements that are there. Rents, very expensive, which all increase to the overheads, overall overheads of all institutions. So you'll find with this aspect that the congestion, both human and traffic, will be extremely felt, and it will be actually a big saving. There will be the whole idea of equitably distributed connectivity. Government has always been talking of universal access. Given that this is now demand driven, you will find it's no longer a pull, it's now a push. It's going to be a question of all areas wanting connectivity. So this will catalyze access, and it will fulfill one of the objective of government on universal connectivity. Then you will also have very minimalist office overheads because the personnel, the equipment, services, and consumables, they go down. From my own experience when I was dealing with a lot of companies' payroll software, I realized that personnel costs and stationary are the second cost to personnel. So when you reduce personnel and you reduce now the stationary, because you're not going to be using stationary, that was years ago before there was a lot of widespread e-document, and then you reduce on rent and you reduce all the other consumables, you find the overheads diminish. Now you find also all these supervisors and managers and the whole hierarchy that we have established over the years of people looking after others underneath them. And some of them basically all their job it is to, at some time, a long time ago, it's called MBWA, management by walking around. The job is just walking around checking what everybody is doing. All those jobs disappear because the huge workforce is no longer necessary because we already cut down on the staff. So institutions will only retain their very core personnel and weed out non-performing staff. A lot of those people who just are taking lifts up and down, talking to the senior management, to be seen to be very busy. So only the very core people will be retained. And then institutions are going to outsource their non-core tasks to highly specialized, efficient third parties. So the throughput will be high. On a short time, you can actually claim you have got huge capacity because there are small pockets of consultants, contractors, who you can assemble on short notice and have a very big delivery, which otherwise, if you had to spend time recruiting, would have taken you forever and would have been costly and would have been overheads continually. The outsourced parties, it's also beneficial to them because you are not, they're not permanently in your institution. They can take as much as they can. So the constraint of feeling that the motivation of performing more will exist naturally. And then you'll also have a healthier society that sleeps, rests, and is more creative and therefore more productive society. as opposed to people who get to work at 8:30 or 9, they're exhausted from the traffic from 4:30 when they woke up or when they started boarding their matatu, and they only got to work at 9 on Thika Road and all the Mombasa Road, all the roads, we know how they look like. And so the productivity of the staff will be high. Now, we also have to ask a question, do we live for work or do we work for a living? The society thus far has been that we focus so much on our work that we never have time for living. And it's at the end of our lives that we realize actually there was life beyond work. So the society now will be forced to invest more in time with family, which is actually a good thing. Now, it's also, this environment is democratizing access to opportunities for those who are ready, willing, and able. And I'm not talking about the job seeker, because there's a difference between a job and work. There are some people who just want titles and jobs printed on cards and on desks. But then in terms of performance, some of these people don't actually want work, they want the job, and they keep swapping, moving all over the place. But this now will ensure the opportunities are democratized, they are more accessible to those who are willing to do it. And then the final one I wanted to raise here is the freedom to work from anywhere in the world, like the organization I mentioned. And in the process, you can reclaim vacations. Once upon a time, believe you me, there were times Kenyans used to not work on Friday. They used to have a holiday, a time or the other. Nowadays, I think even Saturdays, even town on Sunday is full. You know, it's no longer the case where the city center was also empty on Sundays when they were saying easy like Sunday morning. It's ever busy. People are always rushing to the city all the time, and the other urban centers as well. So when people have the freedom to work, that's including day and night and the most convenient hours, they're also going to have time to reclaim a vacation of 2 or 3 days in between work, and therefore that improves their overall performance. And I think these are some of the exciting things that I find. There could be more, but this being a starting of a conversation, let me pause there for a while, and maybe we shall discuss further. Thank you, Maxwell.
All right, thank you for that. I think one of the key things that I picked out from that is the democratization of opportunities. And turning this over to you, Suzanne, again, in terms of what excites you most, I know you are living this. You know, do you have a different perspective on this?
So it's funny, Maxwell, when I saw this question, I first thought about all the exciting things, but then, you know, I was gripped with fear, because I'm actually afraid that, especially in the short to medium term, that there won't be enough work, or we won't be able to create jobs fast enough. We already have a huge unemployment challenge, especially for the youth, and the pandemic has aggravated that situation. You know, in the last 10 years, there's been 122 million people enter the workforce in sub-Saharan Africa. And in that same amount of time, we have created 37 million jobs, and only a third of these jobs are formal. So there's still a huge, huge gap, and the pandemic has really aggravated that. I think over the last few weeks, we've really seen this problem come to life. You know, people aren't moving, rides have plummeted, you know, drivers have car loans to pay, they're doing very few trips, and there's no government support for them. So we've been working really hard to figure out, okay, how do we get people back to work? How do we find new earnings opportunities so that drivers can drive, they can deliver food, they can deliver goods? We're soon going to be launching something called the Work Hub, where through our app, we also provide drivers with access to third-party opportunities as well. But, you know, it's really not enough. So in a world where there's a shortage of jobs, where people will have to work multiple jobs, where we're going to see prices coming down, we're going to see earnings coming down, you know, it's really all of our jobs, everyone here on this call, to figure out how we can help people get back to work, because ultimately, I think that's what's going to help our economy get back on track.
Thank you, Suzanne. And we will be coming shortly to the audience. So please keep your questions coming. I can see they're starting to build up. I just want to, again, you know, get back to you, Suzanne, and ask this one question. In terms of sustainability, and you probably touched on this briefly, but how do you see, you know, businesses and business leaders ensuring that we are actually able to sustain work in the future, and be able to actually create those opportunities going forward. Now, I know as Uber, you have, you're a very innovative organization, and so you really pivot really quick. You're able to implement your strategies real fast. But then, broadly speaking, and from your vantage point, how do you see the possibilities around creating a sustainable future through this future of work conversation?
Thanks, Maxwell. I think I'll speak on this topic specifically around what we're seeing in the gig environment. So the global workforce is about 3.5 billion people. Out of that, about 3% are freelancers or self-employed, and only 0.5% are actually gig workers. Now, when I say gig workers, I talk about, people on Uber, on Jumia, on Sendy. So, the percentage is so small that this is certainly not the norm. But now there's a big question around whether this will become something of a norm, given this huge shift that we're seeing. There was a BCG report that was released last year on online marketplaces that estimated that in Africa, 3 million new jobs would be created across the continent in the next 5 years. And this was before COVID. And the majority of these jobs, by the way, about 1.7 million of them was in the consumer goods space. And I think that there could be huge potential for this to grow even more given this digital acceleration. But when we think about sustainability, I go back to those 4 pillars that I talked about right in the beginning. For this to be sustainable, we need to make sure that these jobs are accessible, that gig jobs have lower barriers to entry, that people are really able to access them. We see that on gig platforms, these create opportunities for more women, for more youth, for even people who are, physically challenged. Secondly, people like to do gig work because of the flexibility it offers them. So they're not confined to a 9-to-5 schedule. So there's that sustainability piece that I think Alex has also spoken about, of how you balance your work with your other life, with your family. And I think government now has a really, really important role because this whole notion of social protection is now more important than ever before. When you're going to have so many independent workers, making sure there's social security, making sure there's good universal health coverage, making sure that everyone is protected so that when things like this happen, or even when you have an individual crisis, that you do have some sort of a safety net to fall back on. I think that that's really, really critical and something that governments need to look at in a much more serious way, given these new dynamics. And of course, I think lifelong learning is really important. Not only is the onus on companies to really enhance the lifelong learning programs they have, but I think it's really also up to the individual because, you only get out as much as you put in. So really take it upon yourself to figure out how you can continue to enhance your skills. And I think that's what's going to make you thrive in this kind of an economy.
Okay, fantastic. I think you've raised a very fundamental issue around, the role of government and the role of and how society then comes into play in this. And let me bring Alex into the conversation here. Alex, what are some of the societal challenges that this future is bound to bring? Are there some social or cultural costs or trade-offs that we may end up having to deal with in this future?
Absolutely. We have many of them. Let me start off with some of the ones I consider to be very immediate. Psychological unpreparedness and change resistance. The key question we are all asking ourselves, including us who are on this platform, is why were we catapulted into this? Maybe society or whatever should have been fair to let us know this gently, introduce us, take us through colleges, learn seminars. But then here we are, finding ourselves, we have just been thrown into the deep end. And so perhaps maybe as a sort of a mitigation, because as a problem, is probably what I say in institution to take scenario construction. This is where you start analyzing different scenarios of possibilities in the future, and then coupled with what they have done for so long about change management skills, and then engage that, because then you have to deal with the human, the psychological fact that this thing is a shock, it has come, and then we don't the change aspect of it, we need it. Now, there are also other questions that come in society. How do you deal with legitimate privacy concerns? There are legitimate platforms upon platforms. Everybody have been raising questions. And so there is even a particular video by a certain Professor Lawrence Lessig that is AI. Does a generalization of big data and AI mark the end of privacy? For those that know Professor Lawrence Lessig, he's an authority on some of these issues. So you can actually see how he speaks of our old view of privacy and what we need to probably start looking at. It's a video, it's a short one. I'm more than happy to share the link because it can be the one to provoke us to start thinking, what are the issues we need to do? There are also, another dimension is trust. We are going to have serious problems, trust challenges that are going to come in this new environment. For example, our remote workforce performance and contract delivery trustworthy. You know, we have trusted people to work from home. Are they actually delivering honestly? Is it trustworthy? Another question we may ask, because we have been looking at this future of work in the past from the technological transformation. So we might throw in a bit of what technology also will do, and this whole idea of automation, because there are jobs that will have to go now. Even if we go back to offices, they won't be there, simply because in this period, automation has taken those jobs, where companies will be shocked to find out there are things they never needed to do. So the question will then be, is automation as good as human? That's now the opposite question. When you have chat boxes which are automatically generated by computers, are they the same like these autoresponders on mobile phones? You know, you are taken, press this number, go everywhere. Are they as good? How smart are they? You know, I mean, this is analogous to the whole question of grown versus natural diamonds. You know, there are those grown diamonds which are grown in laboratories versus the natural diamonds. Some people saying natural is better. The other one saying the grown one, which is artificial diamond, is as good as natural. So there are those issues that will happen in society where now we have to start reevaluating. And then you may look at another example in line with what I'm saying about automation. At some point, there are some software that are available right now where Google has one. There is one from the Adobe, and you can actually throw in the clips and the videos you have from Google Photos and also from your phone, and the thing completely makes a full video, including the ones for advertisements. And the question is, if you had hired staff that do filming and they do video editing, and they cost you every month and they take so long before they produce this, do you want to engage technology? And then if you do engage technology, how good are people going to say this is artificial or this is really natural, done by human being? Questions that will have to emerge. Then there's the other question also, how much or can we trust the online? And now I'm raising this question in the context of confidentiality, in terms of secrets, trade secrets. And again, in the past, when I was talking about payroll, I have had the privilege of working with payroll for many companies, and I realized like there was junior payroll and senior payroll. Now we are saying we are pushing everything onto one platform online, and trade secrets, company secrets, confidentiality, and then you start getting issues there. There's also the issue of data mining. You know, are we all prepared? Are all institutions prepared? It's not a fear, it's a question that we must address if you are to address the trust issues. What mechanisms have been put in by the companies that provide us with the connectivity and the platforms to ascertain and ensure that, you know, we are not having those challenges. Then the final one I want to talk about is people called refuseniks. Refuseniks is a phrase that was coined to reflect people who have refused to join. For example, some people may decide to be analog. They don't even want a phone. They don't want to join social media. They don't want to have, you know, they don't want technology. They are refuseniks in that regard. But you know, as per the Constitution, nowhere on the Constitution of Kenya does it say every person must have a mobile phone. So when you introduce, let's say, services that are requiring people to have a number, a mobile number, who is paying for the phone itself? Who is going to pay for the airtime? Aren't you fundamentally interfering with fundamental rights? And so if those people are not going to be in this platform and connected, is it not going to lead to structural exclusion? Just like the Indians under her system, that, you know, some people have argued the biometric system led to even starvation for the poor, for some of those who can't afford. So there are a lot of issues that are going to come, inequalities that are going to come in that system. But I'll pause there because there are also other frightening aspects of this new environment so that I can play the flip side of this coin. We don't just welcome it without looking at the downside, the ugly underbelly, so that we can deal with the whole issue wholesome. Back to you, Maxwell. Thanks. You're probably muted.
Sorry, we are all learning clearly as we move along. I want to bring in the audience here, and there's some interesting questions coming up. Desta, we'll allow you to ask your question directly to the panelists. So Eva, if you could just unmute Kidist, Desta.
Sure. Hi, good morning. Thank you so much, AmCham and the panelists. It's a really great discussion. My comment is really relating to internet penetration. As you know, there is low internet penetration. This is an issue all over Africa, and a challenge to accelerate digitization. So the continent is still trying to get on 4G, while the rest of the world, the developed world, if I can say that, is trying to get on 5G. Therefore, it's absolutely critical for policies to create the enabling environment for inclusiveness, so that this new jobs will be created, right? Or the education can move online. I mean, right now we're suffering. A lot of kids are not still being educated during this crisis because of lack of internet and all this. So I think I would like to hear the panelists take on the importance of the private sector and government working together. Kenya relatively has a good internet penetration, but I mean, if you look at our continent, we have a lot of work which we didn't do before. Now we are faced with this crisis. So please, they can address that. That would be great.
All right, thank you, Desta. I think Alex, this is bang on in your alley. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Nice question. And part of I consider that as an opportunity. And why do I say it's an opportunity? Is what I was talking about, the change in the market for the telecoms. In fact, one of the problems that we are going to experience is telecoms now eating into the traditional face-to-face or physical contact business models, the mamambogas, because now we are going to have online deliveries. I think it started happening already. People have seen it big style. It's already happening. Now, we have had this question for a long time, even before Kenya started getting all this mobile connectivity and internet prior to 2005. And the question was, even in the early 2000s, do we provide, or does the government provide base stations or signal for mobile phones when there is no connectivity, when there is no electricity? And for both the people to charge their phones, and the amazing thing, people started discovering new ways of charging their phones with solar, taking to a friend, battery. And so people innovate because the necessity is the mother of innovation. So we cannot wait for all factors to be in place so that they can all go in place. I like this push because now what I see it as an opportunity is for government to realize its universal access obligation far much easier with all stakeholders interested in widespread connectivity. Because now it has put us all of us on the same side of wanting internet, driven by different needs. Businesses, private sector out to provide the service, individual students wanting to learn, teachers wanting to get into government services and also teach students. All of us have something to do because we have been thrown into it. So our demand has now become a new push for universal access. Is the one I was addressing as universal access. So we will find very interesting models, some of them we don't even know, that will push connectivity to all corners. In the immediate, and medium term, yes, that challenge will be experienced. But if we can trust what has happened in the past on mobile phone connectivity, we will see that happening. So we may worry about network and affordability. Again, the same issue. Even the internet will go there to still be a question of affordability to be an issue. But again, competition, if we ensure that we don't have, we have proper competition, we don't allow monopoly, whether it's private, it's also equally as dangerous as public monopoly, then that will still lower the cost and we'll be able to access it. The other question, which is the final one, to do with that particular issue you're talking about, is do we provide connectivity? That was the other question that was there, or do we educate people on technology? And guess what? I don't know if you have a grandmother. Some of us may have grandmothers in rural areas. They don't know how to read or write, but they can use mobile phones. How they learned it, I have no idea. So you can actually see also learning of these platforms, like Maxwell is saying, we learn on the go and it becomes part of our DNA. So I do believe and trust, and I'm convinced that once this demand continues so high, you will find interesting ways of making sure the internet has gone to literally every corner of the country. My view. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Alex. It's amazing that we are already running out of time. We have only about 7 minutes or so before we close this. I want to make sure that we take as many questions as possible during this time. And I want to just ask Patterson Mwangi to please go ahead and ask his question.
Thank you, Maxwell, and well done to the presenters. That was very enlightening. And there was this issue about working from home, because that's the new reality, that's our new norm. One of the challenges you find is, like Alex was saying, the challenge is how do we actually make sure that that internet is at home? Our homes are not even ready. A lot of our challenges is that the people Gezan was talking about, the young people, even where they live, you know, they are living in probably one room when there are 3 or 4 of them. How do we help them in this area? Because it's a real challenge. We are several of us in one room, or even that room. The connectivity has not been provided, because probably it's now that houses are now going to be work compliant going forward. And I'm the chairman of a company called Abode Nablis, and it's something that has really come to our minds. Abode Nablis deals with developing for people the cost-effective houses, low-cost housing. And one of the things that has come up is that going forward, you must ensure that these houses come with facilities that support work. People working from home, people doing what they need to do wherever they are, because we are all in agreement. Going forward, offices are going to be the biggest casualties of the new norm. So this is something that we have to incorporate in our plans going forward. My take. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Peterson. Any of the panelists wants to react to that? Real quick.
Because it's connectivity, I'll quickly touch on it. Peterson, way back in 2005, we started advocating for buildings to be wired with internet infrastructure built into it. Progressively, I think now this has been implemented. This is a requirement among the services, but that started way back in 2005 when we were dealing with the issue of national ICT policy. Regards the environment at home, just like Chris Cuomo, the brother of the governor of New York, was saying, when you're working from home, you have even kids shouting, they're all happy. It doesn't, everybody has that challenge. It doesn't matter whether it's one room. But what I would say is that perhaps it doesn't matter where the people are, they could look for community centers where now they are served with connectivity as a starting point. Even if you don't have individual connection, then and maybe some facilities like the way they used to be called internet centers, as a starting point where you can go. The cyber cafe, maybe we have gone back to that business model also now booming again because it's been eaten by mobile phones. But this time it will have more of the services that an office would have, like the other innovation hubs we're doing around, is an opportunity for those ones to grow. And after that, maybe they can now branch out into their own big houses. But everybody, including all of us, do have challenges in our homes. And in fact, on a light note, there are some people who are even having challenges dealing with too much time with their spouses. And so really, it's interesting. It's a global challenge everywhere, but I say it in jest. Yeah?
All right. Okay, thank you for that. Here's one for Suzanne. What are some of the online jobs that you see will be on demand going forward, especially for those who are at home with no jobs but have a laptop and internet? it would be great, the person is saying that it would be great to understand the trends of online jobs currently. You want to give that a stab?
Interesting. I'm actually not sure what's going to come up. I think, you know, typically when we think about it from like an Uber perspective, it's about like getting out and moving around and moving things, and it's all around mobility. But if you're sitting behind your desk, you know, I know, especially on the low skill side, that there's like a lot of digital transcription stuff that's coming up, especially being pushed by the government and Ajira. So as government also tries to get online and digitize records, as different companies also try to digitize, I think there's going to be a lot of that sort of work that comes up. I know, I can imagine that as many BPOs type services also go online, you're going to see, you know, remote administrative services, call center services, you know, accounting services, and all of those sorts of things. I really feel there's going to be a big shift, you know, overall in those kinds of things those kinds of jobs that you would typically see sitting in an office.
All right, thank you for that. Pancras Mutama, one of the last, probably the last question we'll take this morning. Pancras, you can go ahead and ask your question. Pancras Mutuma rather, sorry. Okay, I'll ask the question. He's asking, or she is asking, remote working seems to be the new normal. And what are your projections of what will happen when the pandemic is behind us? Will organizations go back to old ways of working, or will it be any different? Will this be the new and permanent normal? So basically, I think the question here is asking, have we been stretched enough? have we reached that point of you know, no return, so to speak? Is there a risk that we may just rebound to our old ways of doing things? What are your views on this?
Happy to take a stab at this one. It's interesting, actually. There's an article in The Economist this week called "Death of the Office," and you know, it likens the office to an empire. You know, some of the tallest buildings in the world are offices, just filled with people. You know, sometimes you're sitting next to someone you don't even like, instead of like being with your family. So my view is, I don't think the office is going to go away entirely. You know, I think it's great that we can work from home. I think that it's great that we have access to all of these different tools. It's nice not to have to deal with commute time. You know, it's nice to be comfortable, smart on top, you know, track pants on the bottom. But I think at the end of the day, you know, there's no substitute for that real human connection. And, you know, one of the things that we've really had to figure out how to deal with as we work in these conditions is, how do you manage your teams? How do you build, you know, those relationships? How do you, you know, get people, how do you mentor? How do you get people to be the best that they can? And I think that there's just so much that needs to be done in person. So there'll be a form of office that will exist, but maybe this time the offices will be designed more around people as opposed to just desks with computers, so that it's a much more friendly, much more appealing, much more comfortable, healthy, mindful environment.
Okay, fantastic. Alex, you want to add on to that?
Yes, I totally agree with Suzanne. You know, I think it's always nice sometimes to pick a very radical, revolutionary, and come up with the other extreme of how nobody will ever go to any office and we're all going to be online and we'll never meet with each other. But I beg to differ. It's going to be a blend of a physical and online that will be in the new normal, which will have weeded out all the things that were necessary in the old physical heavy, and then it will also have now come in and entrench some trust and values into the online, which also has its own challenges of online trust as it exists. So both sides will have to start working from their end, and this other one meet in the middle, and we shall have a new normal. So when we open, we are going to be in a different scenario. And it's interesting that question has come up to wrap up our discussion, because I would hope that the chamber in its deliberation summarizes what they have, Because if you look at the terms, among the terms on the task force appointed by the Cabinet Secretary for ICT is to give government proposals on what will happen post-COVID. So I think we all have a responsibility to try and mold and shape that future, because it's neither going to be an extreme of where we were, neither is going to be a totally, this ubiquitous online cyborg space. It's going to be a mix of both. And so we want to make sure we are optimizing the values of online presence, and so that the online becomes more of a representation of a physical, not a substitution, which has been a problem right now. A lot of people have been suffering from multiple personality syndromes, at least two personalities. They have their online personality, and then they have their real life personality. Now is when they all come together in this new environment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think for me, this has been a very, very useful and eye-opening session. And my parting shot is just for us to open up our minds to expect profound changes in how we work, how we learn. Indeed, there will be an educational component to this. Are we being able to provide the right skills to our children and the workforce generally to ensure that they're able to be better prepared for this new future of work? And then how we socialize. Are we going to be comfortable enough doing some of the things that we would naturally do before the pandemic? So we need to lean forward. We need to prepare ourselves for different ways of working. And those who win in this new world are actually already preparing for it. And it's a reason why we thought that it was important to have this particular conversation. I want to invite everybody to take a quick poll that is coming up on your screen right now as we close. And I really, really want to thank Suzanne and Alex for the great insights that they shared with us. And thank everybody, really everybody, for taking their time this morning and joining this webinar. It's been a wonderful 1 hour where we've exchanged ideas, and I believe that this is just the beginning, not the end of this particular conversation. So do look out for the recording of today's webinar, as is the norm, and a brief readout or takeaways from the webinar. So we've come to the end. Please just complete the poll. Just take you about 3 seconds and you should be done, really. It's just 2 questions. Complete the poll. Thank you very much and have a great day and be safe. Thank you all.